Okay, now since we have covered the two nodes, which are event begin play and event tick, we can go to the next one, which is event actor begin overlap. As the name says all, that anything which overlaps with this particular actor, which is our blueprint itself, this particular node will be getting triggered, and whatever is connected to it will be actually executed. So for simplicity's sake, let's move and I'll try to remove these particular functions which we might not be using, and let's just have it here and put it here. By the way, if you want to add those functions which were there before, you can easily right mouse click and you said event begin play if you want that one, and if you just click on it, it will come back again. Or let's say event tick. So this is how you can bring it back, but straight away from right click, and you can select from there by using these particular search buttons. Okay, so let's remove this one and try to see what an overlap does. So let's say that we have a component, our component, which is going to be if something overlaps it or collides with it, we need this print string to be executed. So in this case, let's say, let me just zoom in a little bit. So let's just type overlap. Okay, now as per the logic, anything which collides or overlaps with our actor, we should be able to get this particular function triggered. So let's go back, and where is our event graph, and compile, and let's put it here. Let's go back to our and play the game, and we try to roll our ball and see what will happen. So for the overlap to basically work, what we need is to add another component. It's called collision. You have here something called box collision. If you click on it, and if you go back to our viewport, you will see a box here which is showing a box itself, and this box is basically used for collision. So anything which actually passes through it or overlaps with it or collides with it, this node will get triggered and it will execute this particular function. So let's say for now I will just try to place the cone. Actually, let's do one more thing. Let's take our box and move it to our root itself. So now in this case, our root is now the box and not the cone or the cube. So if we remove the cube and we move it here, and we take the, sorry, that was the cone. So we have the cube here now, and let's move the cube down. Let's place it here. Let's place it here. Okay. Now we have a collision set in our particular scene. If we click on the collision box, we can see that we have certain information available to us. Here we see that we can have the box name. We can change the name of the box itself, and you can name it whatever you want in this case. And however, we can even increase the size of it, of the particular box itself. So let's say I think 1.2. Okay, 1.2. Okay, yeah, this is, I guess, fine. So if we can, 1.2 is going to increase the basically size of the whole thing. I think this is the one. Let's say 64 by 64 and 64. So this makes our collision box much bigger. Let me just try, for the simplicity's sake and not having this relation, let's just bring it here and have these components separate to each other. So let's put them on the side. Now what will happen, once we will go into the gameplay and we will roll our ball, and when it will pass through this particular box itself, this should actually trigger and it should print the string. So compile, go back to our gameplay, let's play game, and let's try to see if it works. There you go. So we have something called overlap. However, if you see, you cannot see the box in your game. However, if you go back into viewport and you can see the box, but in the gameplay you cannot see it. So why is that? Let me just move it up a little bit. You just have to on the screen itself. So if you go back to our blueprint itself and you click on the box, if you scroll down, and you will see a rendering option which shows there are two options, which is something called visible. So if you uncheck it, it won't be visible either in the viewport or in the game at all. And the second one is hidden in game. So hidden in game is by default checked to true, which means it will not show in the game at all. However, for the debugging purpose, you want to see it and see if everything is working fine, you can uncheck it. If you uncheck it and compile, you see in the viewport, you go to your level, you will see in the viewport it's showing. Let me just show, close this particular FPS since we are not needing it at the moment. And if you now click play, in your game you will see the box is appearing, and when you overlap it, you will see a print string which is being printed in the left corner itself. So as soon as you overlap or collide, it will start printing this one. And in the same way, you can actually have any other function attached to event graph, and that will execute as soon as the collision happens. This is a starting of your first example where you can start building interactions in your game itself. Let's go to viewport again and let's try one more thing. In the add component, you can have another component, and let's say collision, and we have sphere, and we have collision capsule. So these are also two different types of collisions, same as like the box itself. And if we click on it, we will see that we have another collision which is added to your game itself. Now it will work in the same way as what we have defined here. However, if you will play now, and let's try to also unhide it in this case. If you will play the game now, you can see both of the collisions are showing up. And if you move to the box, you will see a print string overlap is showing up. And if you go to the another collision for the sphere, it will again do the same thing. So what's happening now, I want to explain you this one, that both of these are collisions. So overall, whatever is in our graph, in our graph actually, the viewport, whatever is added to our blueprint here in this case, it will generate that particular hit regardless of whichever collision is going to touch. So how can we make it something more specific? So something which makes sense that, okay, at this moment, when the ball actually overlapped, it overlapped with this particular collision, and when it overlaps with another one. So let's move on and let's try to see how that will work. Let me go and bring this particular collision, and let's just try to play around with a little bit on this case, and then have our cone here and our collision, which is this one. This is sphere collision, and we try to put it here. Okay, just a little bit more. Okay, and once it's done here, if you go on the right side, you will see that sphere radius is showing, so you can increase the sphere radius. So let's say we want to put it like like something 50. So this is going to just try to cover up most of the area of the cone itself. You can bring the cone here inside the sphere, and let's try to give it a little bit more radius to our sphere itself. I think 60 will be good enough. Okay, yes. So now the sphere is totally covering the cone itself. Now, if we go back to the event graph, we have other types of overlaps which can also be, triggered specifically to this particular sphere or specifically to this particular box. So click the sphere and then right click here and say collision. Okay, yes, collision. Okay, now it's saying event overlap, or is I think begin overlap. Okay, so now you see that we have an event actor begin overlap. This is what we are already using, so it is basically for the whole blueprint. However, if a component is going to be overlapped, we can have a specific node for that. So let's click this one and you will see here that it has created a node for sphere, because we have already selected that one, and then based on whatever was selected, it will create the node for that particular component. And now what will happen, and what should happen also biologically, that anything which overlaps with this sphere, it should print something what we would like to have it. Let's say, Control C, Control V. Once we'll have it here, like to disconnect it with this one, and here we will say sphere overlap. Okay, great. So let's compile this one in our viewport. Let's make sure that it's there and it's connected to it, and we'll go back to, by the way, I think to make it more better actually in this case, let's try to take our cone and make it as attached to a sphere. So now what will happen actually is that if you select the sphere and you move around, your cone will also go up and down. So parent is the sphere, cone is the child. Okay, at the moment I haven't done anything with the cube. We'll come back to it later. So go back, hit play, and then let's try to first move to the box. So that's overlap with the box, and now overlap, sphere overlap. So this is how you are able to see that something has interacted with your cone itself. However, at the moment, since we are displaying the sphere itself, that's why it's good for debugging purpose. But when you have the actual game, you don't need to do these things. Let's go back to our blueprint again, and let's just try to take the cube and bring the cube under the actual cube itself, and at the same time let's select our box, and under the box itself we say event graph again, right click, begin overlap, begin overlap component. So let's select this one, and automatically you will see that it has created an overlap node for the box. Now if we go and copy and paste it again and connect this particular pin to this node, and let's move in saying box overlap, compile, rolling, and I think this is a little bit up actually, but that's fine. Let's play this one and let's see how it works on. So if we move to the box overlap, but you have to see one more thing which I will explain to you in a moment. And if you go to sphere overlap and box overlap, but at the same time if you see that it is also generating overlap and box overlap. Why it is happening? Because if you go back to your blueprint, we are still using begin actor begin overlap, which is applied to our full blueprint. So regardless of we overlap with the box or we overlap with the sphere, that particular event is still going to trigger and it's going to generate. Let's disconnect it, and see what are the results. Let's go back and press play. Now I should not be printing it. See, box overlap, sphere overlap, box overlap, and box overlap, as you can see, and speed is too fast, sphere overlap. So what we have learned here, actually a very specific things as actually a starting point of how your interactions start working with different components. You can add a lot of components to your blueprint itself and make them interactable, and then you can, since print string is the only one we are using now because of the example purpose, but as we move forward in our further tutorials, you will see that we have a lot to cover. There are a lot of functions which we can attach them, and that is how you will be able to start producing interaction and doing something really interesting overall.